I didn't expect anything special from that course. It was one of those professional development things my manager kept insisting would open doors, which usually meant sitting in a bland room with bad coffee, pretending to care about slides someone copied from the internet. I signed up mostly to get it over with, not because I believed it would actually change anything. That's where I met Lance. The first day, I showed up early out of habit. Not eager, just anxious. I like knowing where to sit, where the exits are, how things are going to go before they actually start. The room was half empty, chairs arranged in neat rows, projector already humming quietly. I picked a seat near the middle, safe enough to not stand out, close enough to pay attention if I had to. A few minutes later, someone dropped into the chair next to me. "Please tell me this isn't going to be 8 hours of slides," he said. I glanced over. Lance. Dark hair, slightly messy like he didn't bother fixing it after waking up. Hoodie instead of anything remotely professional. He looked relaxed. Too relaxed for a setting like this. "I think it is," I replied. He sighed dramatically, leaning back in his chair. "Great. Love that for us." I smiled before I could stop myself. That was the first thing I noticed about him. He made things feel lighter without trying too hard. "I'm Lance, by the way," he added, turning slightly toward me. "Noah." He nodded like that meant something. "You here voluntarily or forced?" "Somewhere in between," I said. "Same," he laughed. "My boss said it would look good. I think he just wanted me out of the office." I huffed a quiet laugh. "Probably." The room started filling up around us, but we kept talking. Not about anything important. Just small things. Where we worked. How long we'd been there. Complaints about meetings, deadlines, all the usual. Still, something about it felt easy. By the time the session actually started, I realized I wasn't dreading the day anymore. Because Lance was there. The instructor droned on for what felt like hours. Slides. Bullet points. That same corporate tone that makes everything sound important and meaningless at the same time. At some point, Lance leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "If I fall asleep, just nudge me." "You won't," I whispered back. "You're underestimating how little I slept." I glanced at him. "Why?" He hesitated for a second, then shrugged. Couldn't shut my brain off. There was something in the way he said it. Casual, but not really. I nodded. "Yeah, I get that." He looked at me again then. Not just a quick glance. A real look, like he was trying to figure something out. "Do you?" he asked quietly. "Sometimes," I said. He didn't push. Just nodded and leaned back again. But after that, he kept glancing at me during the session, like he'd found something he didn't expect. During the first break, we ended up standing by the coffee table together. "Well," he said, picking up a cup and immediately making a face. "This is terrible." "It always is," I replied. "Why do they even bother?" "Tradition." He laughed. "Yeah, suffering builds character, or whatever." We stood there for a moment, not really moving away. People passed around us, conversations overlapping, but it felt like we were in our own little pocket of space. "So," he said, "you live around here?" "Yeah, not far." "Same," he nodded. "Makes this slightly less painful." I hesitated, then said, "You coming tomorrow too?" "Yeah." "You?" "Yeah." He smiled, small but genuine. "Good." That shouldn't have mattered. But it did. The rest of the day passed faster than I expected. Not because the course got better, but because we kept finding little ways to talk. Quiet comments. Shared looks when something particularly boring came up. By the end of it, it felt like we'd known each other longer than a few hours. As we packed up to leave, he turned to me. "Hey," he said, "you want to grab something after this? Like food. Something that doesn't taste like disappointment." I blinked, slightly caught off guard. "Yeah," I said. "Sure." "Nice," he smiled. "There's a place around the corner. I've been there once. It's decent." We walked out together, falling into step like it was natural. Outside, the air felt different. Cooler. Lighter. We talked the whole way there. About work, again, but also other things. Music. Random opinions. Stuff that didn't feel like small talk anymore. At one point, he said, "You're not what I expected." I glanced at him. "What does that mean?" He shrugged. "I don't know. You seemed quieter at first." "I am quiet." "Yeah," he said, looking at me, but not in a boring way. I laughed. "That's a relief." "I mean it," he added. "You actually listen. Most people just wait for their turn to talk." I didn't know what to say to that. So I just said, "You talk a lot." He grinned. "Yeah, I know." We got to the place, ordered food, sat across from each other. And something shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way you could point at and say, "This is the moment." But it felt like we'd crossed from strangers to something else. Something easier. Something closer. At one point, he leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on the table. "I'm glad I sat next to you," he said. It was simple, casual, but it landed deeper than it should have. "Me too," I replied. He held my gaze for a second longer than necessary, then smiled and leaned back again. We stayed there longer than planned. Long enough that the sky outside started getting darker. When we finally left, we walked in the same direction for a while before reaching a corner where we had to split. "So," he said, stopping, "tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I nodded. He hesitated, then added, "Don't switch seats on me." I smiled. "I won't." "Good," he said. There was a brief pause. Not awkward, just lingering. Then he nodded once and started walking away. I watched him for a second before turning in the opposite direction. And as I walked home, I realized something I hadn't expected at all. I was already looking forward to seeing him again. And that never happened to me. Not like this. Not after just one day. But with Lance, it felt different. Like something had already started, even if I couldn't explain what it was yet. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't try to overthink it. I just let myself feel it. The second day shouldn't have felt different. Same building, same room, same terrible coffee. But it did. I noticed it the second I walked in. Not the room, not the people. Him. Lance was already there, sitting in the same seat as yesterday, leaning back like he owned the place. One arm draped over the back of the chair next to him. My chair. When he saw me, his face changed immediately. Not in a big, dramatic way. Just a small shift. Like something settled. "Thought you'd ghost me," he said as I sat down. I said I wouldn't. People say a lot of things. I glanced at him. "You don't trust people much, do you?" He smirked slightly. "I trust patterns, not promises." "That sounds exhausting." "It is," he admitted, then added, quieter, "but it keeps things simple." I didn't respond right away, because something about that didn't feel simple at all. The session started again, and just like yesterday, it faded into the background. What didn't fade was the awareness of him sitting close, of the way he'd occasionally lean in to make a comment, of how natural it already felt. At one point, he nudged my arm lightly. "This is worse than yesterday," he whispered. "Impossible." "I swear it is." I think he's repeating the same slide. I glanced at the screen. He wasn't wrong. I let out a quiet laugh. Lance looked at me like that was the highlight of his morning. And for some reason, that stayed with me. During the break, we didn't even pretend to separate. We just stood together like it was expected. "So," he said, sipping his coffee and immediately regretting it again. "You always this easy to talk to?" I raised an eyebrow. "You always this persistent?" "Only when I find something interesting." I felt that land somewhere deeper than it should have. "Something?" I repeated. He smiled slightly. "You know what I mean." I didn't. Or maybe I did, and I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. We moved toward the windows, away from the noise. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward, just quiet, comfortable in a way that didn't make sense yet. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Depends." He huffed a quiet laugh. "Fair. I'll risk it anyway." I turned slightly toward him. "What?" He hesitated. "Not long, but enough to notice." "Do you do this often?" he asked. "Do what?" "Let people in this fast." The question caught me off guard. I didn't answer right away, because the honest answer was no. "I don't think I am," I said. He watched me for a second. "Feels like you are." "Maybe you're just easy to talk to," I replied. He shook his head slightly. "No, that's not it." There it was again. That way he looked at me like he was trying to understand something that mattered. Before I could respond, someone called us back in. The moment broke, but not completely, because when we sat down again, something had shifted. Not outwardly, but underneath. The rest of the day felt shorter. Or maybe I just stopped noticing time. We kept talking in small ways, sharing things without realizing it, building something without naming it. By the end of the session, it felt less like we'd just met, and more like we were continuing something. As we packed up, Lance didn't wait this time. "Same plan?" he asked. "You mean food?" "Obviously food." I smiled. "Yeah, same plan." "Good," he said. "I was hoping you'd say that." We went to a different place this time. His choice. "It's better," he insisted. "It has to be," I said. "That's not a high bar." He laughed. We ordered, sat down, and fell right back into conversation like there hadn't been a break between yesterday and today. But there was something else now. Something quieter, more intentional. At one point, he said, "You don't talk about yourself much." "I do." "Not really." He shook his head. "You answer, but you don't offer." I leaned back slightly. "Maybe I don't like being analyzed." "I'm not analyzing you," he said. Then, after a pause, "Okay, maybe a little." I laughed. "Why?" "Because I'm trying to figure you out." And he looked at me for a long moment. "I haven't yet." "Maybe there's nothing to figure out." "Everyone has something," he said quietly. That tone again. Less joking. More real. "Do you?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he smiled, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "I do." I didn't push. But I didn't forget it either. We stayed longer again. Long enough that leaving felt like interrupting something. When we stepped outside, it was colder than yesterday. Neither of us moved right away. "So," he said, hands in his pockets, "last day tomorrow." "Yeah." He nodded, then looked at me. "Feels short." "It's only a course," I said. "Yeah," he replied, still looking at me, but still. There was something in that. Something neither of us said out loud. "Are you working after this?" he asked. "Yeah." "Same." A pause. Then, "We should probably exchange numbers." I almost laughed. "Probably." He pulled out his phone, handed it to me. "Put yours in." I did. When I gave it back, he didn't look at the screen right away. He looked at me. "Good," he said quietly. And again, it felt like more than just numbers. We stood there a second longer than necessary. Then he stepped back slightly. "I'll text you," he said. "Okay. Don't ignore me." "I won't." He smiled at that, then turned and started walking. This time, I didn't watch him leave for long, because my phone buzzed almost immediately. "Lance, just making sure you didn't give me a fake number." I smiled. "Noah, guess you'll find out." "Lance, I already did." I looked up instinctively, but he was already gone. Still, something about that made my chest feel lighter. Like this wasn't ending tomorrow. Like this was just starting. And that thought stayed with me the whole way home. The last day felt different the second I woke up. Not in a dramatic way. Nothing had actually changed yet. But there was this quiet awareness sitting in my chest. Like something was about to shift. I got there a little earlier than usual. Not intentionally. At least that's what I told myself. Lance wasn't there yet. For the first time since we met, I sat down alone in that chair. And it felt wrong. I didn't like that. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check something, but really I was just waiting. Then, "Relax, I'm here." I looked up. Lance dropped into the seat next to me, slightly out of breath, like he'd rushed. "I thought you'd abandon me on the final day," he added. "I got here early." "Suspicious," he said, narrowing his eyes playfully. "You don't seem like an early person." "I'm not." "Then why?" I hesitated. "Habit," I said. He didn't look convinced. But he didn't push either. "Good," he said instead, leaning back. Would have been a terrible ending otherwise. Ending. That word landed heavier than it should have. The session started, but neither of us really paid attention anymore. It felt like we were both aware of the same thing. This was it. After today, there was no automatic reason to see each other. No shared room. No forced proximity. Just a choice. At one point, Lance leaned closer than usual. "So what happens after this?" he asked quietly. I kept my eyes on the front. "We go back to work." "That's not what I meant." I turned to him slightly. "Then what did you mean?" He held my gaze for a second, then looked away. "I don't know," he admitted. "That's why I'm asking." I didn't have an answer. Not a clear one. And I think he could tell. The rest of the session passed in fragments. Small comments. Longer silences. More glances than before. Like we were both trying to hold on to something that didn't have a name yet. When it finally ended, no one clapped this time. People just started packing up, eager to leave. Lance didn't move right away. Neither did I. "So," he said after a moment, "this is it." "Yeah." He nodded slowly, then stood up, grabbing his bag. "Come on," he added. "We're not ending it like this." "Like what?" "Like co-workers at the end of a meeting," he said. "We're getting food." I smiled slightly. "Of course we are." Obviously, we left together one last time. Same street, same direction, but it felt different now. Quieter, more aware. We went back to the first place we'd gone to. "Full circle," he said. "Or lack of creativity." I replied. "Hey, don't ruin the moment." I laughed, but the moment was there, underneath everything. We ordered, sat down, and for the first time since we met, the conversation didn't come as easily. Not because we had nothing to say, but because what we actually wanted to say felt bigger than usual. "So," he said, tapping his fingers lightly against the table. Be honest with me. About what? This, he gestured slightly between us. What is it to you? I exhaled slowly. I don't know yet, I admitted. He nodded like he expected that. Okay, he said. That's fair. What about you? I asked. He looked down briefly, then back up. It feels like something, he said. Something what? Something I don't want to just let fade, he replied. That landed. Harder than anything he'd said before. I felt it settle in my chest. Because I didn't want that either. I don't want that either, I said quietly. His shoulders relaxed, just slightly. Good, he murmured. A small silence followed. But this one wasn't uncertain. It was grounding. So we don't let it fade, he said. Okay. Okay. I nodded. Okay. He smiled then. Not the playful one. Something softer. More real. We stayed longer than we needed to. Again. But this time, it felt like we were stretching the moment on purpose. When we finally stepped outside, neither of us rushed to leave. Cars passed. People moved around us. But we just stood there. So this is where we say goodbye, he said. For now, I replied. He tilted his head slightly. You sure about that? No. He smiled at that. Good. There was a pause. Then he stepped a little closer. Not too close. Just enough. Can I be honest about something else? He asked. You've been doing that all day. Yeah, he said, exhaling slightly. And it's not something I usually do. I waited. I noticed you the first minute I sat down, he said. My heart skipped. You didn't even say anything yet, he continued. You just looked. I don't know. Different. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't interrupt. And then you talked, and it just confirmed it, he added. And now I'm here, 3 days later, not wanting this to end. There it was. Clear. Simple. Honest. I don't want it to end either, I said. His eyes held mine. For a second, everything else faded. Then he nodded, like he'd made a decision. Okay, he said. Okay, what? I'm going to ask you something, and you're not allowed to overthink it. That sounds dangerous. It probably is. I smiled slightly. Fine. He took a small breath. Have dinner with me this week, he said. Not because of the course. Not because we're already here. Just because it's you and me. My chest tightened in a way that didn't feel bad. Just intense. Real. Okay, I said. His expression softened immediately. Okay, he repeated quietly. We stood there a second longer. Then he did something small. He reached out and briefly touched my hand. Just for a moment. Just enough to make it real. You're not allowed to disappear, he said. I won't. Good. And this time, when he walked away, I didn't feel that sense of something ending. Because now, we had chosen it. Whatever this was, we chose to continue it. And somehow, that felt even bigger than the way it started. Dinner felt different from the start. Not like the course. Not like those accidental conversations between breaks. This time, there was no excuse. No shared obligation. It was just us choosing to be there. I got to the place a few minutes early. Again, I told myself it was just because I didn't want to be late. But standing there, checking my phone every few seconds, I knew that wasn't the full truth. Then, Noah. I turned. Lance was walking toward me, hands in his pockets. That same slightly messy look like he didn't try too hard, but still somehow got it right. Hey, I said. Hey, he replied, slowing down as he reached me. For a second, neither of us moved. It wasn't awkward, just aware. You've been here long, he asked. Not really. He smirked. You're lying. Maybe a little. I knew it. We went inside together, and this time, everything felt more intentional. The way we chose the table, the way we sat across from each other, the way we didn't rush into conversation right away. It wasn't uncomfortable, just different. So, he said, glancing at the menu but not really reading it. This feels weird. A little, I admitted. Good weird or bad weird? Good, I said. Just new. He nodded. Yeah, new. We ordered, and once that was done, the space between us shifted again. Less uncertain, more open. So tell me something real, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Define real. Something you don't usually say on the first, whatever this is. I leaned back slightly, thinking. You go first. He exhaled through a small smile. Of course. He looked down at his hands for a second, then back at me. I almost didn't ask you out, he said. Why? Because I wasn't sure if I imagined it, he admitted. Whatever this is between us. You didn't, I said quietly. I know that now, he replied. There was something vulnerable in the way he said it. Like he wasn't used to admitting that kind of thing. What about you, he asked. You felt it too? I nodded. Yeah, I said. I just didn't know what to do with it. That makes two of us. We both smiled slightly. The food came, but neither of us really focused on it. Conversation started flowing again, but it was different from before. Deeper, less surface level. At one point, he said, "You're hard to read sometimes." I've heard that. Is it intentional? I thought about it. Not really, I said. I just take time to open up. He nodded slowly. That makes sense. A pause. Then, I don't usually do this. Do what? This, he gestured again. That same small motion between us. Let something matter this quickly. I felt that. Because I was the same. Me neither, I admitted. That seemed to settle something in him. Like we were finally saying the same thing out loud. After that, it got easier. We laughed more. Talked more freely. But underneath it all, that awareness stayed. This wasn't casual. Even if we weren't calling it anything yet. At some point, he leaned forward slightly. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You've been asking a lot of things. And I'm not stopping now." I smiled. "Go ahead." He hesitated, just for a second. Then, "Are you seeing anyone?" The question was direct, but not aggressive. Just honest. "No," I said. "You?" He shook his head. "No." Another pause. Then he nodded, like he'd confirmed something for himself. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay." I repeated. "Yeah," he said. "That's good." I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. We both knew. By the time we finished eating, neither of us seemed in a hurry to leave. But eventually, we had to. Outside, the air was colder than before. Or maybe I just noticed it more. We stood there again. Same as before. But not the same. "So," he said, exhaling slightly. "This was a good idea." It was. I was a little nervous, he admitted. I could tell. He looked at me. "You could." "Yeah." He laughed softly. "Great. It wasn't a bad thing." "Yeah." "Yeah," I said. It made it feel real. That made him go quiet for a second. Then he stepped a little closer. Not touching, but close enough to feel. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I'm glad you asked." We held eye contact a little longer than usual. And this time, neither of us looked away first. "You busy tomorrow?" he asked. "After work?" "Yeah." "Not really." He nodded. "Come over." The words were simple, but they landed heavy. Not in a bad way. Just significant. "To your place?" I asked. "Yeah." A small pause. "You don't have to if it feels like too much," he added quickly. I want to keep this going." I didn't hesitate this time. "Okay," I said. His expression softened again. That same look he got when something mattered more than he expected. "Okay," he repeated. We stood there a second longer. Then, "Text me when you get home," he said. I smiled slightly. "You're one of those people?" "Apparently." "All right," I said. "I will." He nodded, satisfied. Then finally stepped back. "Good night, Noah." "Good night, Lance." And as I walked away, I felt it again. Stronger now. This wasn't sluchina. This wasn't just something that happened during a course. This was something we were building. Step by step. Choice by choice. And tomorrow would be the first time we stepped into each other's space for real. And I could already feel it. That something was about to shift again. The whole day felt slower than usual. Work dragged. Meetings felt longer. Even small things, emails, messages, random conversations felt like interruptions instead of part of the day. Because my mind kept going back to one thing. Lance. To tonight. To what it would feel like to step into his space. That thought stayed with me all day. Not in a nervous way exactly. Just aware. When I finally left work, I checked my phone almost immediately. "Lance, you still coming?" I smiled. "Noah, yeah. Noah, on my way in a bit." "Lance, good." Just that. But somehow it felt like more. His place was closer than I expected. A quiet street. Not too busy. The kind of place that felt lived in, not temporary. I stood outside his building for a second before going in. Not because I was unsure. Just because I felt it again. That shift. Like this mattered. I texted him. "Noah, here." The reply came almost instantly. "Lance, doors open." I took a breath. Then went in. His apartment was on the second floor. I knocked lightly anyway. The door opened almost immediately. "Lance." "Hey," he said. "Hey." For a second, we just stood there. Same as before. But different. Because this time, there was no public space around us. No noise. No distractions. Just him. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. I walked in slowly, taking in the space without making it obvious. It felt like him. Not overly neat. Not messy. Just real. "Sorry if it's a bit chaotic," he said. closing the door behind me. It's not. It is, he insisted. I just had time to clean the obvious parts. I smiled slightly. It's fine. He looked at me for a second, then nodded, like he believed me. Do you want something to drink? He asked. Water's fine. Wow. Responsible. Don't get used to it. He laughed quietly and disappeared into the kitchen. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle. It wasn't uncomfortable, just full. When he came back, he handed me a glass, our fingers brushing briefly. Same as before. Still noticeable. Still real. Sit, he said, nodding toward the couch. I did. He sat next to me, too close, not too far. That careful distance again. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then, this is weird, he said. I glanced at him. You said that yesterday. Yeah, but this is a different level of weird. Good or bad? He looked at me. Good, he said. Just more real. I nodded. Yeah, I said. It is. A pause. Then he leaned back slightly, exhaling. I was thinking about you today, he said. The honesty in that caught me off guard. Yeah. Yeah, he nodded. More than I expected to. I didn't joke it off. Didn't deflect. I was thinking about you too, I admitted. Something in his expression softened immediately. Okay, he said quietly. That word again. Simple. But it carried weight. We started talking after that. Easier than I expected. About work first. Then about other things. More personal things. Not all at once. Just gradually. At one point, he said, You're different here. In your apartment? Yeah. How? He studied me for a second. You're more relaxed, he said. Or maybe just more yourself. I thought about that. Maybe, I said. What about you? I asked. You seem the same. He shook his head slightly. I'm not. No. No, he said quietly. I'm more aware. Of what? He didn't answer right away. Then, you, he said. That landed. Hard. The room felt quieter after that. Not empty. Just focused. You do that a lot, I said. Do what? Say things like that. He frowned slightly. Like what? Like you don't realize how they sound. He looked at me, confused. I know exactly how they sound, he said. That made my chest tighten. Then why say them like that? Because they're true. No hesitation. No backing off. Just honest. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't. The silence stretched. But it didn't break anything. If anything, it pulled us closer. Not physically. Just in that space between us. Then, come here, he said softly. I hesitated for a second. Not because I didn't want to. Just because I felt the shift coming. Then I moved. Closer. Not all the way. Just enough. He looked at me like he was making sure. Like he was giving me time to stop. I didn't. His hand found mine. Slow. Careful. Like it mattered. And it did. Still okay? He asked quietly. Yeah, I said. He nodded. Then stayed there. Not rushing anything. Not pushing. Just holding my hand like that was enough. And somehow, it was. We sat like that for a while. Talking less. Feeling more. At some point, he said, I don't want to mess this up. You won't, I said. You don't know that. Neither do you, I replied. He huffed a quiet laugh. Fair. Then he looked at me again. More serious now. I mean it, he said. It's not nothing to me. It's not nothing to me either. That seemed to settle something in him. Like we were finally on the same page. He shifted slightly closer. Still holding my hand. Still careful. And then, we're going slow, right? He asked. Yes, I said. Good, he murmured. Another quiet moment. Then he added, softer. Because I want to actually feel this. That stayed with me. Because I felt the same way. And for the first time in a long time. I wasn't trying to rush anything. I wasn't trying to define it. I was just there. With him. And it felt right. Simple. Real. Like something worth taking time with. And as the night stretched on, neither of us tried to move away. Because neither of us wanted to. And that alone said enough. I didn't expect the next shift to feel so quiet. Not dramatic. Not overwhelming. Just steady. After that night at Lance's place, something between us settled into place. We didn't talk about it right away. Didn't try to define it. But it showed up in everything. The way he texted me the next morning. Lance, you make it hard to focus at work, just so you know. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Noah, sounds like a you problem. Lance, it is. Lance, still blaming you. I smiled. And that feeling stayed with me the rest of the day. We started seeing each other more naturally after that. Not planned in a complicated way. Just happening. He'd text, I'd come over. Or I'd text, and he'd meet me somewhere. It stopped feeling like making plans and started feeling like part of my routine, like he was becoming part of my life without forcing his way into it. And the more time we spent together, the more I noticed things, small things, important things, like how he always looked at me when I was talking, even if I was saying something unimportant, like how he remembered details I didn't think mattered, like how he never rushed anything, not conversations, not moments, not us. One evening, about a week later, we were back at his place again. Same couch, same quiet, but everything felt more familiar now. "Can I ask you something?" he said. I glanced at him. "You always do. And you always let me." "Depends on the question." He smiled slightly, then got quieter, more serious. "What are you thinking right now?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately, because the honest answer felt bigger than usual. "I'm thinking this feels easy," I said finally. His expression shifted. Not surprised, just attentive. "Easy how?" "Like I'm not trying," I said. "Like I don't have to figure anything out all the time." He nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I feel that too." A pause. Then he added, quieter. "And it kinda scares me." I looked at him. "Why?" "Because things that feel this easy usually don't last," he admitted. That landed. Because I understood that feeling. "I don't think that's always true," I said. He looked at me, searching my face. "You don't?" "No," I said. "I think sometimes it just means it's right." He didn't respond right away, but something in his expression softened again, like he wanted to believe that. Later that night, we were sitting closer than before, not thinking about it, not questioning it, just naturally. At some point, he leaned his head lightly against mine. No hesitation, no asking, just trust. And I didn't pull away. I stayed, because it felt right. "You're quiet," he murmured. "Just thinking. About you." He shifted slightly, just enough to look at me. "That good or bad?" "Good," I said. He studied me for a second, then smiled. "Small. Real." "Okay," he said. We didn't stay up too late. Not because we wanted to leave, but because neither of us felt the need to stretch the night just to avoid ending it. That was new for me. Usually, I held on to moments like that, try to make them last as long as possible. But this felt like it would still be there tomorrow, and that made it easier. When I got up to leave, he walked me to the door. Same as before, but closer now, more certain. "Text me when you get home," he said again. I smiled. "You're consistent. Only with important things." That look again. I nodded. "I will." There was a pause. A familiar one now. But this time, neither of us stepped back immediately. "Hey," he said quietly. "Yeah, I'm glad it's you." That hit deeper than anything else. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't complicated. It was just honest. "I'm glad it's you too," I said. He held my gaze for a second longer, then nodded, like that was enough. On the way home, I realized something. I wasn't questioning where this was going. I wasn't trying to predict anything. I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. For once, I was just in it. Fully. And it felt right. The next few days only made that clearer. We kept showing up. For each other. Consistently. Easily. And the more it grew, the more I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't intense in a chaotic way. It wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't confusing. It was steady. And somehow, that made it feel even stronger. Because it wasn't built on uncertainty. It was built on choice. Every day, every message, every moment we didn't let fade. And I could feel it now, clearer than before. This wasn't just something that started on a course. This was becoming something real. And neither of us was pretending otherwise anymore. The first time something felt off, it was small. So small I almost ignored it. It happened on a Thursday. We had plans. Nothing big. Just dinner, maybe a walk after. The kind of thing that had already become normal for us. But around 6, my phone buzzed. "Lance, hey. Lance, can we move tonight?" I stared at the message for a second. Not because plans changing was a big deal, but because this was the first time he'd asked. "Noah, yeah, that's fine." "Noah, everything okay?" There was a pause before he replied. "Lance, yeah? Lance, just a long day." Something about that felt incomplete, but I didn't push. "Noah, okay." We didn't see each other that night, and it shouldn't have mattered. People get busy. Things come up. But I felt it anyway. That slight shift. Like something had moved just a little out of place. The next day, he texted like normal. "Lance, coffee later?" Like nothing had happened. And I let it be like that. "Noah, yeah." When I saw him, he smiled the same way. Looked at me the same way. But I noticed it. Something underneath. "You okay?" I asked after a while. "Yeah," he said quickly. Too quickly. I didn't call it out right away. We kept talking, walking, sitting in that same easy rhythm. But it wasn't exactly the same. At some point, I said it anyway. You seem off. He exhaled, looking away for a second. I'm fine, he repeated. That's not what I asked. That made him glance back at me. A small pause. Then, I just had a lot on my mind yesterday, he admitted. About what? He hesitated. And that hesitation, that was new. Work, he said finally. I nodded slowly, but I didn't fully believe it. We didn't push it further that day. Things went back to normal on the surface. We laughed, talked, spent time together like we always did. But I felt it now. That awareness. That something was there he wasn't saying. Over the next few days, it showed up more. Not in obvious ways, just small ones. He'd take longer to reply sometimes. He'd go quiet in the middle of conversations. He'd look like he was somewhere else for a second, then come back. And every time I noticed it, I told myself not to overthink it. But I was starting to. One evening, we were at his place again. Same couch, same space. But the silence felt different. Not uncomfortable, just heavier. You're doing it again, I said. He frowned slightly. Doing what? Going quiet. I'm just tired. Lance. That made him look at me properly. Don't do that, I added. Do what? Act like I won't notice. A pause. Then he leaned back, rubbing his face. I'm not trying to hide anything, he said. It feels like you are. That sat between us. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then, I'm just trying to figure something out, he admitted. What? He hesitated again. Longer this time. Then shook his head. I don't know how to explain it yet. That wasn't a no, but it wasn't an answer either. And for the first time since this started, I felt something unfamiliar. Not doubt. Not exactly. Just distance. Small, but real. I'm not asking you to explain everything, I said quietly. He looked at me. Then what are you asking? Just don't shut me out. That hit. I could see it in the way his expression shifted. I'm not, he said. Then let me in. Silence. Then, I'm trying, he said. And he meant it. That was the problem. He wasn't pulling away. He just didn't know how to stay fully present. I nodded. Okay, I said. Because pushing harder wouldn't help. And I knew that. That night, when I got up to leave, something felt different again. Subtle. But there. He walked me to the door like always. But this time, he didn't say anything right away. You'll text me? He asked finally. Yeah. A pause. Then, hey, I said. Yeah. If something's going on, you can tell me. He looked at me. Really looked. Like he wanted to. Like he was close to it. But then, I know, he said. Not now. Not yet. I nodded. And this time, when I left, that steady feeling I'd had before, it wasn't gone. But it wasn't as solid either. On the way home, I kept thinking about one thing. Not what he wasn't saying, but why he wasn't saying it. And for the first time since we met, I felt it. That quiet uncertainty. Not about him, but about what happens when something real meets something unresolved. And I didn't know yet which way it would go, but I could feel it now. We weren't just building something anymore. We were about to test it. I didn't expect the conversation to happen the way it did. No build-up. No perfect moment. Just quiet honesty, finally catching up to us. It was a few days later. We hadn't seen each other since that night. Just texted. Normal things. Check-ins. Small jokes. Nothing that directly touched what was sitting underneath. But it was still there. Unresolved. When I got to his place, he opened the door slower than usual. Not distant. Just careful. Hey, he said. Hey. I stepped inside and immediately felt it. That same space. But heavier. Like something was waiting. We didn't sit right away. Didn't fall into Bravuchny rytm. Instead, we stood there for a second longer than normal. You were right, he said suddenly. I frowned slightly. About what? That something was off. There it was. Finally. I didn't rush him. Okay, I said quietly. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I've been trying to figure out how to say this without messing everything up, he admitted. You won't, I said. You don't know that. I do, I replied. Because not saying it is worse. That made him go quiet. Then he nodded. Like he accepted that. I'm not used to this, he said. This feeling, he clarified. Where something actually matters, and I don't have control over it. I listened. Didn't interrupt. Before you, he continued. Everything in my life was simple. Predictable. I knew how things would go, how they would end. And now, I asked softly. He looked at me. And this time, he didn't look away. Now I don't, he said. That wasn't fear of me. That was fear of losing control. And I understood that. More than I wanted to. I think I got in my head, he admitted. About what this is. About what it could turn into. That's not a bad thing, I said. It is when you start thinking about everything that could go wrong, he replied. A pause. Then, I didn't want to mess this up by rushing it, he added. You weren't, I said. I know that now, he said quietly. We stood there for a moment. Closer than before. More open than we'd ever been. So what changed? I asked. He hesitated. Then, I realized I'd rather feel this than avoid it. That hit. Because it was simple. But it was everything. I don't want to pull away just because I'm scared, he said. Then don't, I replied. I'm not, he said. And this time, it felt certain. The tension that had been sitting between us finally eased. Not disappeared. Just understood. And that made all the difference. We moved to the couch eventually. But closer now. Not careful. Not measured. Just natural. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what? For making you feel like I was shutting you out. I shook my head slightly. You didn't shut me out. You just didn't know how to let me in yet. He looked at me, then nodded. Yeah, he said. That sounds right. A small silence followed. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm. Grounded. I meant what I said before, he added. About what? About this not being nothing to me. It's not nothing to me either. He smiled slightly. Then, I think I want this to be something, he said. There it was. Not rushed. Not forced. Just real. Yeah, I said. I think I do too. He didn't look surprised. Like he already knew. But needed to hear it anyway. We sat there for a while after that. Not talking much. Not needing to. Because everything important had already been said. At some point, he leaned into me again. Like before. But this time, there was no hesitation behind it. And I didn't think twice. I just stayed. Hey, he said quietly. Yeah. I'm glad we didn't let it fade. I smiled slightly. Me too. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about a course, or timing, or coincidence. It was about two people choosing not to walk away, even when it got uncertain, even when it got real. And that's what made it different. That's what made it work. Later, when I left his place, everything felt steady again. Not perfect, not guaranteed, but real. And that was enough. Because now I knew. Whatever this was becoming, we were both choosing it. And this time, neither of us was holding back.